And apparently we were recording. So I think, yeah, it was yesterday. I did the very first video on the series, and I'm actually just going to go over to Facebook so that if there is anyone joining, that way I can see your chat. Cool. So I wanted to do this series for a couple of reasons, but it's something that last week when I did the readings, I did some readings just before the full moon, and you guys also expressed some interest in hearing a little bit more. So I thought I would share a couple core pieces because I feel like, I talked about this yesterday because there is a piece of this teaching. It's a reason why I teach this. And it's that it's not theoretical. So I shared about this yesterday, but what I'm talking about, and one of the reasons why I actually came on today and why I wanted to do this live today, was that this is about actually what does it look like to live with healthy nervous system range, with a large nervous system capacity? What does that actually look like? And not just in theory, but what does it actually feel like and look like? And what is it in real life? A lot of these like techniques and teachings that I see are kind of in a couple different camps, often in the spiritual world. It's theoretical and not necessarily embodied. And in the more like psychological world, it can be very heady and again, like theoretical, but it doesn't often like really work with the body. And unless we really embody these practices, what's the point? Right? So anyway, if you didn't check out yesterday's video, it is on my Facebook. I also uploaded it to my YouTube channel, so you can find it there under the nervous system series. And so today what I wanted to talk a little bit about is stress. Stress. I was just listening to some stressors outside. There's people selling things outside my door. This is actually what I wanted to talk about. I actually woke up today feeling kind of agitated and tired, and my nervous system was feeling a little bit just sensitive, and I was feeling a little bit like not triggered is not the right word. It was like I was feeling sensitized. And so what I wanted to just share with you is an example of, because yesterday I kind of talked a little bit about kind of these myths around what we think, healthy nervous system is. It means that I think we have this like idea of perfection where we like never feel bad and we never get triggered. And that's just not reality. That's not what it looks like in the real world. But what I wanted to share with you is what I think there's a lot of myths as well around what stressors are, what load is on our nervous system, and how we can actually work with that in a different way. So the first thing I just wanted to do is, I guess, just define what I mean by like nervous system load and nervous system stress. And basically what's happening is our body, we're animals. Okay, we're animal beings. And as humans, we tend to forget and neglect that we actually are our biology. We kind of like to trick ourselves into thinking that we are somehow better than and above the animal kingdom when we are actually part of the animal kingdom. So the piece that I wanted to kind of talk about is that we, in really honoring our biology, we need to take in consideration that as animals, we are constantly receiving information from our environment. And depending on our range and our capacity and what kind of information that is, and depending on kind of like, where we grow up, how we grow up, all of this different, like kind of how our nervous system patterning really, like what our baselines are, right? That all of this complexity is constantly happening, and it's part of how we're responding to our environment. So we're like in constant relationship with our environment, right? And so this is what I mean in terms of nervous system load, is really, it's just all of that. It's the volume of information that's coming in. It's the frequency of information that's coming in. It's our range and capacity to be able to be with that information, process it with that information. And it's just information. And I think this is really important because that in real time is also going to change, right? So if you haven't slept very well for a few days, your body, your nervous system might be, that's one kind of like load that your nervous system is kind of dealing with as a baseline. And then if all of a sudden, you're in this noisy environment and like, weather's changed all of a sudden, and, or you're in a place you're not used to, like you have all of these other kinds of things, of pieces of information that can kind of overwhelm our nervous systems. This is where we can kind of feel like, okay, like we're triggered, right? Where we can get kind of grumpy or short, or where we just don't feel very good. Maybe we feel tired, maybe we feel overrun, or we feel overwhelmed. This is kind of where we can get into this space of like overload. So I just wanted to kind of share with you my own little story time, because I would consider myself to have pretty like solid range in my own nervous system, and a pretty wide capacity. Not that there is not room for growth, but there has been a lot of growth in the last 15 years in my life. And so I would consider myself someone who really is able to be with and has a really large capacity for information. And so when I woke up today, I had all these plans for the day, and I just noticed that I was feeling kind of agitated, like this low grade on edge, like this little sounds and stuff were just kind of like grating, like literally felt like grating on my system. And so rather than, this is what often we do, is we kind of get into our head often about this stuff. And we automatically, it's like, oh, I started my day kind of crappy. Okay, like, here goes the rest of the day. Like, we kind of get into this place where we just kind of go downhill and get into our own like self-judgment and all of this BS that can happen, this kind of negative self-talk that can kind of like just kind of spiral into this like yucky big ball of nasty putrid garbage, which is often what happens, right, in the real world. This is kind of what happens. It's like you wake up kind of on the wrong side of bed, and then everything is do. So for me, and my approach to my life and my practice, which is really like just literally waking up, my practice is not like meditating for hours in a day and doing a whole bunch of yoga and all that kind of stuff. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just not saying that for me to really embody what I teach, it's living my life. Like I teach what I live. And So I sat this morning and I sat with my journal and I spent some time and I kind of like felt into with just like a curiosity. Okay, like what is happening? Like what is my body telling me right now? Like what am I feeling? And what I really was noticing was one, I was really, really called to like spend some time with just nurturing myself today. And two, I was really noticing a heightened sensitivity for my nervous system. I happen to be in a part of my hormonal cycle where I am more sensitive. And so my nervous system right now is more sensitized to information, which means I feel and see and hear a lot. It's like the volume has been turned up for these particular days. And so that will shift in a couple of days. But I thought, okay, well, that is a really important piece, right? So rather than me fighting what's happening, rather than me trying to override my biology, I decided that I was going to enjoy what I really need right now, which is silence. So I canceled some afternoon plans. I shut all my doors and windows. I even turned on my AC. Oh my God, which it's not even that hot out yet, but I was like, I just need to cancel out some of that noise, like literal noise. I live in a really noisy environment. I did not grow up in a really noisy environment. I grew up in a really I grew up in the middle of nowhere, in a culture that's very quiet. I grew up basically in a valley in the mountains in Canada. And so my nervous system as like a set point is kind of used to, that's one of the things for me that's like really nourishing is being in nature, being in silence. So kind of having a little bit of a bath in silence, that, okay, you know what, I'm just going to spend a couple hours and just shut everything off and like let my nervous system just receive lack of information, just like turn the volume down so it can have a little bit of a break, right? And so this is kind of real life. And the other thing that I think is really important is that we can often delay our biological, or not we can often, we do this all the time. We delay our biological needs. And then we wonder why we're stressed out. Okay, like this is something that's so essential and so important. You know, talk about self-care is so rampant in our culture. And self-care, I'm just going to go on the record and say it's not about your mani-pedi spa day. Okay, like it is just not. I'm not saying don't go to the spa, like it's a great experience, awesome. If that's your jam, go for it. But do not confuse ignoring your biological needs and trying to replace it for some kind of like luxury experience. It's just not the same thing. There is a lot of nurturance in those kinds of experiences. However, if you are not eating when you're hungry, if you are rushing through your meals, if you're not properly taking care, like if you are needing silence and you're not giving yourself a break and having silence in the moment. This is the thing, is we have this thing around like delay, right? Like, oh, I'll eat later. I'm busy right now. I have to like, no, that is really not taking care of yourself. If you are constantly ignoring your basic biological needs for external reasons and external circumstances, that is not having aligned priorities with your well-being. It's just not, right? And like no amount of like spa days are going to like reverse not taking care of yourself on a biological level. And I think that's really important, because if we want to work with increasing our range and capacity, if we want to be more okay with not being okay, we need to have a solid foundational base. And it actually starts there. It starts with actually honoring our biology. Um, So here's the other piece. On a biological level, stressors and load are normal, right? Stress is actually a normal part of our day-to-day experience, which means that your nervous system was designed to work with it. It was designed intelligently, right? The place where we're actually because there's so much like demonization around stress and how stress is bad and bad for health and all the things, and it only is bad when we are not fully present to our organism, when we're not fully present to what's happening, when we're not really cognizant to the stress that we are, or the information. Stress is really just information that we're receiving. When we are kind of gaslighting ourselves about the information that we're receiving, if we're in a noisy environment and we can kind of feel ourselves starting to shut down because it's too much, right? If we in that moment aren't willing to be aware and connected to what's happening in our whole system, we kind of ignore and separate our biology. That's actually the place, that's the gap where stress becomes not good. That's where stresses become harmful, is that we're actually not really receiving the information fully. We're kind of ignoring. It's kind of like constantly being in hunger and constantly ignoring it. That is a stress, right? Because we're not listening. Hmm. Hmm. So yeah, I think that was the piece that I'm going to leave it at that. We're not going to do crazy long. I'm not going to do crazy long rant today. But I did want to talk a little bit about just clarifying what stress really means, what load really means. I think there's this myth again around trying to minimize load and trying to reduce the amount of stress. That's actually not really realistic in a lived experience, because the world is constantly feeding us information, right? Our entire nervous system, all of our 5 or 6 senses, we are constantly receiving, right? We are relational beings. So we are in relationship constantly with other beings, with our environment, and being connected with our animal nature allows us to actually live in that, embody that in real time. So it's actually not necessarily about avoiding stress. Stress isn't the problem. It's not about reducing it either. It's actually about recognizing in real time what's happening. What's happening with the information we're receiving? How are we relating to that information? And what is it that we need? Is there anything that we need to do to like take care of ourselves on a biological level in relationship to that information, right? It's as simple as, am I hungry? do I need to eat? What kind of food does my body really want right now? Do I want protein? Do I need a little bit more salt? Is there something that I'm like kind of particularly craving? Am I taking the time to really be present and eat, nourish myself, like actually sit down, shut things down, and just focus on feeding myself slowly? Am I enjoying the process of nurturing myself? So a lot of this is actually really simple, but a lot of what happens is we have like these underlying beliefs and perspectives and shoulds around, because here's the thing is it's really easy to glom onto like rules and formulas, right? Like this is how you're supposed to eat, or this is what you're supposed to do, or this is like, this is some kind of like perfective or perfection way of being. But that's why it doesn't work in real life, because that's not real life. Real life doesn't look a certain way. It's not formulaic. I mean, it is very much organic, right? And so to be able to actually be connected in harmony with our own organic process, we have to start being able to honor on the basic level our own biological needs in real time. This is like the simplest way to start to connect. I think that's everything for today. Anyway, again, I welcome your questions and comments. And again, I will be releasing more information about origins soon in organic real time. And if you have questions, if it's something that you're drawn to, just send me a message. And we can just chat about it directly. Basically, what Origins is evolving into is really teaching you how to be your own therapist. It's teaching you how to heal yourself, how to work with yourself. So it's not so much about techniques as it is about starting to kind of unwind and build a foundation for your nervous system really to kind of like settle into, right? It's kind of like that's the basis for all of the things that we want in our lives, all the things that we're trying to call into and grow and create and expand. We need to, in order to really expand and share and give with generosity, we need to be able to first really be generous with ourselves, right? We need to be able to have and start from a place where we're already nourishment. We're already nourishing ourselves. We're in nourishment. We're saturated, right? Then it's easy to be able to expand further. So anyway, my inbox is open if you're curious about it. I'll be releasing more information about that in the near future. What else? Yeah, I think that's it. All right, my dears. Happy Wednesday. Mwah.